Hello, welcome to the One Life Church devotional series where we cover the entire Bible in 20 months. Well, today's chapters are Esther chapter 5 and 6, where our heroes, Esther and Mordecai, find themselves in a world that's gone mad. Tyrannical rulers, oppressive laws. Now, I'm standing in front of the TV here. This is the news bulletin, and you would be forgiven watching our news, actually, that we're living in similar times. Tyrants on the world stage, oppressive laws, chaos abounds. The question is, how do you handle it? Do you just don't watch the news and pretend it's not there? Do you try cooperate? Do you adopt an aggressive dog-eats-dog stance? Do you try and strategically navigate your way through the chaos? But the problem is people are fickle, they're unpredictable, they're selfish. What we see in this story is how Mordecai and Esther navigate their faith through these testing times, and we can learn from this. So let's hear the story. Esther realizes she's been appointed for such a time as this, and dolls herself up, risks her life to go before Xerxes, her husband, who hadn't seen her. She was living in a loveless marriage. He hadn't seen her for months, and she takes her life into her hands. Now, he had to hold out a scepter in front of her to accept her, otherwise her head would come off. So he holds out the scepter when he sees her and says, "What can I give you? Up to half my kingdom." I mean, this guy's, he's delirious. Going to give half his kingdom away right then and there just because he's happy to see a beautiful woman. She says, "Actually, you know what? All I want is dinner. Dinner for two. Actually, no, dinner for three. Bring your prime minister along." So when the prime minister Haman, who's the dude, remember, he organized the genocide decree. He organized the obliteration of the Jews. He's told the king and queen want to have dinner with you. Well, he runs home to go and tell his wife Zeresh, who actually was a little bit more scary than him, and his friends that he's really being promoted now. But as he goes home, he sees Mordecai, and Mordecai refuses to bow down to him. So he's furious. He says to his echo chamber, his friends and his wife, "This means nothing to me. All this promotion means nothing to me. If this guy, this Jew, dishonors me like that." They said, this is what Zeresh said, "Put a pole in the garden, hoist it nice and high, stick it up into the sky, and impale the man on it." What a woman! Imagine that. His blood splattering into her flower bed, a garden with a man hanging. What sort of a woman is that? Anyway, he thinks it's a great idea. He goes to the palace early in the morning to try and convince the king that the genocide should begin today in his garden. But unbeknown to him, the king hadn't been able to sleep the night before. And, so he gets someone to read a book to him. And it's the book about his life. That's his most favorite book, of course. And he gets to the point where Mordecai foiled the assassination attempt. So he says, "Has anything been done to honor Mordecai?" They say, "No, nothing." So he says, "Come on, I need an advisor." Haman had just arrived. He says, Haman, tell me something. If I want to honor a man, what do you think I should do?" Haman, being the egomaniac that he was, said, "Bring your horse, put him on there, put your robe on him, get your best prince to walk in front saying, 'This is what Xerxes does for the man he wants to honor.'" Thinking it was him that was going to be honored. King says, "Fantastic, you're brilliant. Do that for Mordecai." Well, you can imagine. This is actually very funny. This is a biblical comedy. He has to march his arch enemy around saying the king honors this man. He is livid. And his family say to him, "You're in trouble now, my boy." So, anyway, at that dinner, Xerxes says to Esther, "What do you want?" And she says to him, "Actually, I want another dinner. Want another dinner." And so that's where the chapter ends. But what can we learn out of this? Well, firstly, Esther and Mordecai, they understood this. God was working behind the scenes. We call that providence. Even though the world is chaotic, you got to realize God hasn't lost control. He's in charge. If he's in charge of you, you're okay. Who was it who stopped the king sleeping? Who was it who got him to read that particular book? Who got it? Who was it that organized him to remember Mordecai? Who was it that put a Jewish woman as the queen? You see, God's busy working behind the scenes. Even though he's not mentioned in the book, he's busy pulling the strings behind. That's called providence. This is the way we navigate through a chaotic world, a world with crazy people governing it, is that God's actually in charge. They're not in charge. God's in charge. The second thing that we get out of this book is how to approach the king. So, she had to go to him, and it says she earned his favor. which is an oxymoron. It doesn't make sense. Because biblical favor, you can't earn. It's given to you. And so, sometimes in the Bible we learn from what people do, and other times we learn from it in its opposite. In other words, that's not what we have to do. And so then when we approach our King, we don't have to grovel like that, expecting that we're going to earn. We can't earn his favor. He gives us favor. So as we face a chaotic world, we know that we can run into his presence, boldly come into his presence. Why? Because Jesus has made the way for us. And then finally, where are we to invest our lives? Haman was investing in himself and his own reputation, whereas Mordecai and Esther were investing in the kingdom. And, when the world goes mad, you can ask yourself, do you fight for your own little part of